Hello, y'all. I don't know what this is. This is technically a solo episode by me, Adam, since we mentioned it on the last podcast, episode 14 of Husband and Wife Talks. Go check it out if you haven't yet. But since I promised that there would be an extra episode, I guess, for our delayedness, and since the wife is away, the husband has to talk about science because sometimes Marta falls asleep if I talk about science, and I'm interested in talking about science. And that's why I guess you'll see in the feed that there's an acronym, or I'll just fully spell it out as husband interested in talking science, or HITS for short. Look at that. We love acronym here. You can basically replace us with the government for our love of acronyms. I think we outweigh the amount of usage of acronyms. I'm just kidding. I don't think anyone would come close to the amount of acronyms used by the government. But, so, I sort of just wanted to do this. I don't know if it would be a regular thing. Maybe if people email hotpod@gmail.com and say they want more of this, then I'll release more episodes. But this was sort of me wanting to talk about things going on in the science community, I guess you could say. Things that I've read on science sites, new articles, research published recently. Not too much. I'm not going to go diving deep into things as much. It's not going to be like I'm not going to be talking about 15 things at once during an episode. Maybe I'll pick out a few things that I'm interested in, like you'll see here. So in the future, these episodes are probably going to be not like an hour long unless I somehow ramble for an hour. It's just going to be me talking maybe 15 to 30 minutes about things that I've seen and I found interesting, and I thought you hot listeners out there, or HIT listeners, now that we have this new acronym, will be interested in hearing about. So I guess I'll just get started. Woo! Starting off, apparently eating in a 10-hour window can override disease-causing genetic defects and can sort of nurture health. So from Science Daily, quote, scientists at Salk Institute found that mice lacking the biological clocks thought to be necessary for healthy metabolisms could still be protected against obesity and the metabolic diseases by having their daily access to food restricted to a 10-hour window, end quote. So the research was published in the Cell Metabolism on August 30th, so going a little back. And it suggests that the health problems associated with eating all hours of the day, so like your 24-hour cycle, can be corrected by eating all calories in that 10-hour time span. The research suggests that eating while your digestive genes are more active, which is what's going on there. Your digestive genes are more active in that 10-hour period when you first wake up, could lead you to a lean, healthier life. And towards the end of the day, your repairing, I guess, genes are... that's when you're slowing down. That's when you're about to go to bed. That's around that time. That's when your body's trying to wind down and repair from all the wear and tear during the day that goes on. Mind you, there's not much wear and tear of sitting at an office desk, but that's neither here nor there. So the way they went about studying it is that they took rats and they were able to genetically modify them to take away their biological clocks, so they don't know exactly what time of day it is. So the rats were basically split into two groups. One group was able to eat, had access to food all around the clock, just like how sometimes we like to eat, where sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you're hungry and you just want to go for a snack. It happens, I understand. And the other one is eating the same amount of food, and I should point out this is a high-fat diet that they're putting these rats through, so they are kind of, I guess, not forcing, but there's more chances of the rats becoming fatter. But they gave the rats the same amount of calories that the 24-hour period rats would eat, but in the 10-hour time frame. So basically what happened, I sort of gave it away, but the rats that ate in that time frame, that 10-hour time frame, were far leaner and healthier. Quote, according to the researchers, the new work suggests that the primary role of our our biological clocks may be to tell the animal when to eat and when to stay away from food. This internal timing strikes a balance between sufficient nutrients during the fed state and a necessary repair or rejuvenation during fasting, when your biological clock is disrupted, as when humans do shift work or when it's compromised due to genetic defects. The balance between nutrition and rejuvenation breaks down and diseases set in. So unfortunately, it sort of makes a conclusion that shift workers that work unfortunate time schedules where their body is used to wanting to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and then go to bed at 10, they sort of get their biological clocks all screwed up, which causes them to, they're more likely to be unhealthy, I guess you could say, because your body is in a discombobulated state. So a positive, more real-life takeaway that I've gained not just through this article, but through practices, is just when you eat healthier at a normal time period, you're not always, I guess, eating things, which I understand. I've done that before, where late at night you just want some ice cream. I understand. It's completely understandable. But I also understand the fact that when I started eating on a healthier diet, eating better things, when Marta got me on Whole30, so to speak, and we're eating properly during the day, no extra snacking, no eating around the clock, I did feel a lot healthier, a lot more energetic. I had a lot more energy throughout the day, and this sort of gains credence to what they're finding in the study, and it sort of makes sense if you think about it. And also, a side note, it is also better. I wrote this in my notes, so I didn't forget to write this down. So, it is also better to gain proper eating habits when your metabolism is moving fast while you're young. So that's what I was trying to get at, is getting proper eating habits now while your metabolism is flying at a rapid pace. I know someone whose metabolism just constantly moves, and they can eat whatever crap they want now. But when you get older and you're still eating like garbage because you've sort of built up that, that ability to eat before, and it's sort of stuck with your brain, eventually your body is going to slow down. If you're not working out, you're not, burning off calories, you're going to end up, gaining fat, so to speak. So I think eating properly organic food should be the way to go. And in that time span, words. It's more difficult to talk when you don't have somebody to bounce off ideas with. So when I would bounce off or say something to Marta, she can talk for a minute and I can regain my composure. But now my mouth is all dry and I have to keep going. Whew, this is a struggle. So the next thing that I saw today, which it sort of irks me, is that apparently now they're saying that Pluto should be reclassified as a planet. I mean, I've always been in the camp that Pluto should be classified as a planet. I don't understand this BS where it's not a planet. It is a planet. I'm just gonna, I'll get more into that, I guess. But the International Astronomical Union, a global group of astronomy experts, created the definition of a planet requiring it. Oh man, I can't speak. Requiring it to clear its orbit, quote-unquote clear, I should say. Or in more understandable terms, it needs to be the largest gravitational force in its orbit. However, since Neptune happens to affect Pluto's orbit as it orbits the sun, the IAU considers it to not be a planet. However, there is a planetary scientist at UCF, University of Central Florida, Philip Metzger. He doesn't agree with this definition simply due to the fact that it is very wishy-washy of a definition. That's the scientific term right there, wishy-washy. I'm telling you right now, it's science. Believe me. This definition seems to be contradictory to when you're looking at other solar systems. When Metzger went back to review scientific literature after going over 200 years back, he was finally able to discover a scientist back in 1802 using the term clear orbit for defining a planet. So it's not even used in today's terminology, it seems like. So even as more reason to discount the study, to distinguish between asteroids and planets, this clear orbit is not even used. So asteroids, you obviously know, they fly through space. They don't really have an orbit. And they're not really, the differentiation between asteroids and planets aren't really... They don't use clear orbits, so I don't get why it would be used for planets in a solar system or our solar system when they don't use it for solar systems outside, ours, that are far away. So Metzger does recommend classifying a planet based on its, if it's large enough that gravity allows it to become a spherical shape. This is due to, according to Metzger, that is an important step in evolution of a planet. The spherical shape, quote, initiates active geology in the planetary body, end quote. So I can sort of agree with that statement, and it's kind of, I've always felt sad that Pluto got excluded from planetary for being a planet or a dwarf planet, now that it's called, I believe, or maybe not a dwarf planet at all anymore. I don't know. Just because it seems like it's such a fascinating planet. I think there's like oceans underneath the crest on the surface. And it just feels like this is such, the scientific community or the astronomy community seems so wishy-washy on their decision of whether or not Pluto should be a planet. It seems like this is like a on and off relationship that you see your friend in, and you say, oh, maybe this relationship is not the best. Maybe you should finally make a decision of whether or not you should commit to this type of thing. But they're like on again, off again, friends with Ben's type deal. This is kind of frustrating. I just want them to make a decision, and I'll probably disagree if they don't make it a planet. I think it should be a planet. Shout out to Pluto. Who my Pluto supporters out there that are listening, I know you agree with me. So the final thing that I saw that I thought was kind of interesting and sort of leads to what's going on in today's world is apparently we stick to false beliefs and that feedback that we get trumps hard evidence. This study was done at UC Berkeley where they were supposed to point out items that fit an imaginary word. I think the word was Daxi. So basically, they were told there was like 20 or so images that these people would see, and they were supposed to say yes or no if this boot or this computer or this, pencil defined the word Daxi. So after each result, they would report on how certain they were about their choice, and it came out even if they got all the guesses wrong, but if they ended up getting the last 4 or 5, they were right, quote unquote, they would feel absolutely confident now about this made up term, and they would look at an image and know with absolute certainty. The positive feedback of getting the guess right would reinforce their confidence in what they were deciding. It seems like a very simplistic study. Honestly, it's very straightforward, but it does show a lot of how me as a human, I understand positive feedback and me wanting to constantly, get positive feedback. It's always nice. So we always choose the most recent info that conforms to our ideas and ignore the whole swath of data that's out there. So this sort of goes into the simplistic study where they get the first bit of it right, but they don't go back and look at the past amount of wrong guesses that they've had. They could have had 19 or 20 wrong in a row, and they get the last 5 right, and they feel like they're all right, ready to go. I guess it just, why does that happen, I wonder? I guess just as humans, like I mentioned before, we just like to be right in our ideals. It makes me think about, how people, it's always stated that people like to, nowadays in social media, they like to stick to their bubbles, so to speak, their political bubbles or things of that nature, where they want to stay where they will be right and not be challenged to think, hey, I'm not receiving this positive feedback. Where if you talk to somebody who believes in you, believes in your ideas, and you'll just constantly bounce off one another with positive feedback, and it feels great and all dandy, but that doesn't really, you're not looking at the whole swath of data that other people have different ideas, and either way, they could be wrong, or both of you could be wrong, and you're sort of the message in the middle. But if you don't ever look at different things outside of your peripherals, you're not going to find it. It basically comes down to people just wanting an easy conversation. It goes down to, in a lot of times in the media nowadays, people want to jump to conclusions, or they jump to the most recent data that they find. You see that everywhere. Even these crazy conspiracies people have. The crazy conspiracies, you wonder why people believe in flat earth, and I think it's just because they stick together and they sort of believe one another, and then they produce well-produced YouTube videos where people can believe oh yeah, I guess these facts are completely wrong, but I'll still believe it because it sounds good and it conforms with what I think, what makes sense to me. I don't know. So, little advice. I'll finish up with a good advice from me, because I'm the know-it-all. I know all and I can give you all perfect advice, let me tell you. Believe me. So I always try to tell myself that if I feel like I know everything, that I actually don't. Like I came up with the idea that, you know how when you're teenagers, you think you know everything, and then when college hits, that's when you realize, crap, I don't know anything. And I feel like to become like a true human, true adult, it's to always check yourself, always realize that you don't know everything. Because if you think you know everything, that stops you from learning. That stops you from going out and trying to find, you know, a new understanding of something that you're into. So say if you're like a high-class programmer, you know this language down pat, but what happens if you're so gung-ho with sticking with this one language? What if, it happens all the time, what if that language becomes obsolete and people move on to a different language, but you're too stubborn and you wanted to stick with that one language because you were an expert at it and you felt comfort in it and you didn't want to branch out? So I just think a lot of times you have to keep yourself in check, saying that you don't, quote-unquote, know for certain about everything. You don't know everything. Because, one, that makes you look like a pompous, hey, you know what? And it just, you know, it turns people off if you think you know everything, even though you don't. Because no one does. No one knows every little detail. I mean, you can know a lot of facts and rattle things off, but there's going to be something that stumps you, something that you don't quite understand. And I think if you go into the mentality of you know everything, then you shut yourself off from learning. And learning is always good. I don't understand why people... It seems like nowadays, after people get out of school, they think that learning is done. They think that learning is, you don't have to learn anymore. Whereas learning is a great tool in life to get higher in your job, get farther, working on harder projects, which give you more, you're become a quote-unquote jack of all trades because you have a lot of experience, because you are willing to work outside the box and people see that. Whereas if you're stubborn and you want to stick with the one thing, you may not go anywhere because you don't have knowledge about a lot of other things. And I just think, you know, you're supposed to continuously learn. That's what life is. You just keep learning and you get better. You become more well-rounded, well-versed in random things that you find interesting and you just want to learn. There are things out there that you just get excited about, and you're more than willing to learn about it. I mean, that's what I personally get excited when I'm learning new things. I mean, I know you can ask anybody if they're learning something that they're interested in, then they're 100% gung-ho, ready to commit to it, ready to learn. I remember, sorry, I'll wrap this up soon, but I remember my brother all the time, who was not a fan of the way that he would learn or the way school was. He was not a fan of learning in that type of environment, or the subjects he didn't find fascinating at all. He wasn't interested in that type of learning, and it sort of turned him off. And he always said that he wasn't a good learner. I always thought, it's like, no, you weren't a bad learner. It was you weren't interested in the things that were being taught to you, which is understandable. But I remember him going into, when he was at college, he didn't do as hot on, the generic courses, the BS courses that for some reason you have to take, even if you're not interested in. If you're going for a certain major and you're 100% confident that's what you want to do, you still have to take these other courses for some reason. I think it's just to give the college more money, if you ask me. But I mean, he was super focused and really interested in what he was doing when it came to like health and fitness and things of that nature, and he did extremely well in those classes because he obviously had a connection to it. He always obviously had a passion for it, and he was willing and able to learn. And I just think that's what you kind of have to find. So don't think you're a know-it-all. That's basically the end moral of this rant. So I've been going at it for about 19 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if I added an intro to all of this. But thank you all for being here. I'm sorry that the last episode came out short. Let me know if you found this interesting, thought this was good. Maybe I was very bad at this episode. I don't know. Just give me some constructive criticism. But if you're listening on our feed, Husband and Wife Talks feed, the Hot Pod, please scroll down if you're on iTunes, the Apple Podcast app. You give us a 5-star rating, maybe write us a review. We are available everywhere. Share us with your friends and family if you want to subject them to our wonderfulness. We really appreciate everybody that does listen, everybody that does give us nice feedback and comments on what we talk about and things of that nature. It's always nice. So please share us with your friends and family. We appreciate everybody that listens. So have a good weekend, since it is going to be Friday when this comes out. Have a good weekend. Bye.